Hello, everybody. Well, let's talk about yarn and hanks today, right? Like when I first started buying yarn, probably like most of you, you went to a Walmart or maybe even a Joann's Fabrics when we had those on Michael's, and you found your yarn in little skeins like this, right? This is a sock of the skein or skein, I don't even know how you say it, of the Premier Fruit Soft Yarn and Strawberry. Most of us, when we first started crafting, this is what we saw. And then when we started ordering yarn on the internet from all these companies, we got boxes of these hanks. Yeah, what in the world do we do with that, right? Now, most of us who've been crafting for a while, we get like a Swift or something, right? And we stretch it all out. But I'm going to be real with you. When I first started getting these hanks, I'd order yarn thinking I was going to get like a skein, and it came in a hank, and I was like, what do I do with that? You should have seen me trying to manage my first hank of yarn. Yikes. It was a disaster. I didn't have a Swift. I was trying to unwind that thing by hand. So many tangles, so many knots, a mess. Okay, super, super frustrating. Now, I do own a Swift, but hey, you know what? If you know about my life, if you know about me, yeah, it's kind of like in storage. It's not accessible. And so, if you know on my channel, I just recently went on a vacation with my family. I was away from home. Now, I did happen to throw some of these hanks of the noble cotton into my bag. I packed them along with me. But I didn't take any time to unhank them and put them in a usable form. So what did I do? Well, let's go through what I do to manage these hanks. And let me know in the comment section, how do you manage hanks of yarn when you didn't pack a Swift, right? When you packed a bunch of hanks of yarn on your travels, but you didn't pack a Swift. I mean, really? What you gonna do? So let's take off the tag of our noble cotton. Let's untwist our hank of yarn, right? Here we go, here we go. We're going to untwist our hank of yarn, and what you're going to first get if you've never had one of these is that it's tied in multiple places, right? So the first thing that we got to do is take our scissor and snip off all of these ties, okay? So that's what I'm going to do here. Gonna snip off my ties. Now, I'm going to be clear with you. When I talk about yarn and knitting and crochet on my channel, like knitting and crochet, it's about creativity. And so that usually means that we're creative people, and we usually find multiple ways of dealing with our, finding ways to manage things and to do things, right? And so when I share with you a technique that I got this last, if you don't know, I'm clipping up. Hi, by the way, if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for choosing to come back, hang out, spend a little bit of your day with me. Yeah. And thank you for your patience while I briefly introduce myself to anybody who might be new to my channel. Hi, my name's May. I love yarn. I love to knit and crochet. Those are my hobbies, and I also happen to have been born visually impaired. So I do like to describe things on my channel for other people who are visually impaired. So right now, I'm just clipping these strands of cotton that tie up my yarn. So I've clipped about 3, I think. And then we got this one where the ends of my yarn are. So there's like 4 strings of cotton coming out of there. So we're going to clip 2, and then that's going to leave us with the ends, right, of our yarn here. And so we want to make sure we clip that. I think I clipped one of my ends. Okay. I still got stuff going on here. I'm not even sure. Clipped off that last knot, clipping off my last tie here, hopefully. This could be a disaster, even though I just talked about my first time doing this, how much of a disaster it was, and it was. I don't know if I can manage this on camera or not. Here we go. Okay, I've got all the ties out. So my very first time trying to manage a hank of yarn, you just know it was a disaster. And it was for years trying to figure out how am I going to do this, without a Swift. Because let's just face it, not everybody can afford a Swift. Just because you can afford hanks of yarn doesn't mean you have the money for all the accessories, right? Well, for me, it's like, well, then use what you got. Like I said, use what God gave you. Now, of course, if you don't believe in God, that's okay. You're welcome here. Everybody's welcome here. I didn't really believe for decades of my life, so it's okay. But I got my two knees, okay? I got two knees, and if you're visually impaired, I'm sitting cross-legged on a bed, and that's what I use. Now, I know this isn't going to work for everybody, right? Not everybody's got knees, right? Let's face it. Some people are amputees. I had a good friend. If you don't know that, I lived in Portland, and I actually had a good friend who had a leg amputated just below his knee. He was in a wheelchair, and so where I have this yarn, I have it going around my knees, and it is going down to the lower part. It's going the top side on my thighs, and then it's going down to the lower part of my knees. So this would not have worked for my friend Ray. He has passed away now, but this would not have worked for him because his leg was amputated at about the place where my yarn is on the lower half of my leg. He was a diabetic. Diabetes is serious, he died from diabetes. So this isn't going to work for everybody. If you're a diabetic and you've lost your leg or a limb to diabetes, then this probably won't work for you. Also, I know some people cannot sit this way because of health conditions, right? I get that. Like my mom couldn't sit this way. Oh, I just lost my earbud. Excuse me. If you don't know yet, I use a screen reader because I'm visually impaired, and in my previous videos it talks a lot, it interrupts us a lot, and so one of the solutions that I have found for that is to just put my earbud in and listen. So I took my yarn off my knees from it. I'm going to rewrap it around my knees. If you're able to sit like this, this might work for you. And so what I do is I go ahead and wrap it around my fingers a few times, right? I just make a ball out of it. I got it around my knees, and then I just start unwinding it by hand. So I just use my knees to hold my yarn in place. I have no idea. Let me know what you do with your hanks of yarn, right? If you have a hank of yarn and you don't own a Swift because you can't afford a Swift, or your Swift broke, or like me, your Swift is MIA in storage, right? And you don't have access to it, let me know. How do you manage your hanks of yarn, right? Because if you don't do it right, it's gonna be a tangled mess. So I like to use my knees. I like to use what I was born with, right? For me, well, my knees go everywhere with me. I don't ever leave them behind. And so now I got enough yarn off my two fingers. I was using if you're visually impaired, I was using my index finger and my middle finger to start the wrap of that yarn till I got enough of a ball that was secure, so that I could start wrapping the yarn. And now I'm just rolling it into a ball using the knees. I really hope that this is showing up on the camera. Honestly, I don't know always, like, visually how my videos are going to look, right? I don't know. And so I don't know how much is visible on the screen. Yeah, so I don't know. But this was what I did. I was at my parents' house. Didn't have a Swift with me. Didn't have, any kind of fancy tool. So if you are going on a vacay, right, and you're limited in what you can bring, and you happen to pack some hanks of yarn with you, and then you're like, ooh, I didn't get that all fancied up into a cake, just use what you got and use your knees. Sit down. cross-legged or prop your knees up in the air a little bit like what I'm doing here, and get your hank of yarn around your knees, and then just start making a ball, right? That's what I do. And I'll be honest with you, like if I'm doing a bunch of yarn, a swift is cool, but if I'm just gonna do a few hanks of yarn, for a project like this, is a shawl. I bought this yarn. I'm making a shawl with it, and so I'm likely only going to use two hanks of yarn. And so, is it worth, figuring out where my Swift is at, getting it out, getting it set up, right? To do up a couple of hanks. No, I think most of us, when we get our Swift out, right, you can crank out a bunch of yarn. You can get it going. That's all good. But for me, this just works. Is it more time consuming? Yeah, it is. It's more time consuming to wind it by hand. It is. I'm gonna be real with you. Like if you're on my channel, I am unemployed, right? I don't have a job, so I sit at home and touch yarn all day. Yeah, I do. Just sit at home and play with yarn. So for me, yes, this is time consuming. Yes, time is valuable. Yes, like all of you, even unemployed, I'm going to be real with you. I'm like, woo, where does the time go? Every single day. And I got insomnia too. Like I didn't go to sleep till after 12. Woke up at 6:30, which really, that's not bad for me. These days, 6+ hours of sleep is really a good night for me. It is. So, I'm not complaining at all, but that still leaves you awake for like 18 hours sometimes. Sometimes for me, I'm awake for like 20 hours because I only sleep like 4 hours. So even for me, days can feel long, right? And still I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't get done everything that I wanted to get done today. Yeah, really. um so, even so, I remember, I don't want any, I know a lot of people are still working, so they don't get home till like 6, and it's cook dinner, and it's go to the gym, and it's like, when do you have time for crafting? Let me tell you, I admire you. If you're working full time and you're finding time to craft and hang out with me on the YouTube, thank you. Seriously, thank you, because I remember those days. Don't think for a minute that I don't remember what it's like to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I had to walk with my guide dogs or with my white cane to a bus, take the bus in. So I didn't, I didn't, when I was working, I would knit during staff meeting. I'd knit during staff meeting. I'd bring yarn with me. I'd knit on the bus, even that quick trip, to the bus, in town. I'd knit on the bus, for real. Knit on the bus. I'd keep knitting, to knit during lunchtime. I usually didn't have time to knit during lunch because, I tried to walk during my lunch breaks at work. That was important to me, to get out of the office, get away, get some fresh air, get some exercise, be fit, be healthy. And so, for me, lunchtime usually meant like walk and then actually eat my lunch, right? And then get back to my paperwork. If you don't know, I worked in mental health. I worked as a psychologist. And so, working, there was always paperwork involved. It was like I was writing up my notes from that morning. I'd see, a couple of clients every single morning. And then, I was in my office typing up my notes. And then preparing for my first afternoon client, reading up on their chart, right? Reading in their chart, checking out my notes, being like, okay, what did we talk about last time? And what was I going to research for them, because I did that for my clients. I would research stuff for my clients, To me, it was really important that I be up on, treatments. If they were asking about a med, I wanted to research it. If they presented with a certain issue, I wanted to look up, latest treatments, that kind of thing. What the literature said. Now, I still kind of just did my thing as a therapist, but I think sometimes it was really important for me to maybe look up books for my clients or resources for my clients. So when I was at work, the only times really I found for knitting was staff meeting, pretty much. I'm going to be real with you. Staff meeting. That's when I got my knitting in during work. Now, I still had my laptop with me. I was still taking notes when appropriate, right? But I would sometimes get knitting done during staff meeting. So, if you're working full time, I hear you, I feel you. I don't even know how you have time to craft hardly, because then you get home. For me, it was like go home and go to the gym, right? For me, fitness and health is super important. So it was like, okay, go to the gym, right? Get my workout in. And then after I go to the gym, then it was, cook dinner, right? Cook dinner. And and then if you've heard me talk on some of my videos, I was helping for a while when I was working up here. A friend of mine, the friend whose property this is, who built this house for me to live in before this house was here, he had got some horses out here, was keeping them on the property. So I would go out in the evenings because I love horses. If you don't know that yet, I love horses. And so we had this beautiful paint horse out here named Nobby, and a pony, and a little filly out here. She wasn't even a year old, Angel. So we have some horses out here just for me to play with, basically, for me to groom and feed and brush, and just because I wanted horses. And so, after work and after dinner, I'd come out here sometimes for just like an hour and hang with them. And so I really didn't make knitting and crochet like a priority. It was like I would do it on the weekends, if I had time, right? If I had time on the weekends, crafting, it was like I would come out here to see the horses, and then if it was nice weather out, I would sit outside with them in a chair or on a blanket. I talk about that in one of my other Weird Wednesday videos. Laying on a blanket, in the middle of the pasture, sitting on a blanket, and just knitting and hanging with them. So, and also in their haystacks in the winter time, I would sit outside. If you don't know that yet, I would sit outside with them even in the winter. I had like this big puffer coat, puffer coats that women have. They got like they're big and they're fluffy, and they got like a faux fur lined hood at the top. So I have like a long knee length brown, it's like a dark brown puffer coat with a fur trim. I got it when I lived in Portland. For a few years in an area called the Pearl District, and there was a Eddie Bauer there in my hood that I could walk to within a few blocks from my little studio. I lived in a studio apartment with my guide dog at that time, and so I was unemployed then. And if you're on my channel, I love yarn sales because I love to save money. I am a bargain hunter, okay? So for me, even not just with yarn, when it comes to clothing, when it comes to shoes, when it comes to anything, I'm always looking for the sales, right? I always want to find the sales. And so, got a little bit of a loop here. Got some yarn that's like it's getting a little loopy over here. I gotta have to rewind this. So, even when I was unemployed, it doesn't matter if it's yarn or clothing or coats or shoes or whatever, I'm looking for the sales. I love to save money. And so when I was in there in the Pearl District, there was this Eddie Bauer that I could walk to, and that's where I got my puffer coat. And it was this, they had these beautiful long, like knee-length puffer coats that I watched all winter long. Okay, waiting for that coat to go on clearance. Yeah. And waiting, hoping that they'd have one in my size. They had lots of colors at the beginning of the season, right? They did. They had lots of colors at the beginning of the season. And then by the time that, you know, they were like 50% off and then 60% off and then 70, I was waiting. I go into the Eddie Bauer with my guide dog. I had German Shepherd guide dogs. And I would go into that Eddie Bauer like every couple of weeks, okay? And the stores in my neighborhood knew that about me. You know, they recognized me with the guide dog because there wasn't really anybody else who lived in my neighborhood who had a guide dog. And so my neighborhood stores knew me, and so I would go in there every couple of weeks and, you know, check on the price of that coat. Okay, I just did. And I was always like, not on sale enough, not on sale enough for an unemployed woman, right? On food stamps, you know. So yeah, it was like, So I had to wait for that coat to go like 70% off, check in the sizes, and then by the time it got on sale in my price range, I think the brown was pretty much all that they had left. They might have had one other color, but it wasn't a good color for me. Let's just say there's colors that I can't wear. I know that, even colorblind. If you don't know that yet, I am colorblind. But I still know that there are colors that I can't wear. And that's fine, actually, because I like brown. You know, not everybody likes brown. I know that people think it's boring or just, you know, like dull. I'm a nature girl. I love nature. And so brown is certainly, you know, a natural color. Now, obviously, you know, there's all kinds of beautiful colors in nature, right? Reds and flowers and, you know, all that kind of stuff, yellows and greens. But brown is certainly part of nature. It's like trees, right? Trees are brown. So it's kind of like an earthy color. So I was cool with a brown puffer coat. So anyways, I just got way lost in this story. But I have a brown puffer coat. So in the winter time, I would go sit outside with these horses in my puffer coat, and I'd still knit. Yeah, I'd be wearing, like, you know, the fingerless gloves, right? Trying my best to knit, you know. So anyways, I just, you know, so I knit on the weekends mostly when I worked. Didn't have a lot of time. So I know this is time consuming what I'm doing here. But I just wanted to sit with y'all with my knees, show you how I do this. And here we go. Guess what? We just turned our hank of yarn, right? We have one of these noble cotton hanks into a ball of yarn. Yeah, we did. So, you know, it's not a cake, right, or anything like that, but it is a ball. It's usable. It's not going to tangle on us. So that, you know, before Swifts, right? Before Swifts, that everybody had in their home, this was how we did our yarn. We made it up into a ball. And so I just use my knees like that. I just sit with my knees, and guess what? There were zero tangles. Zero tangles, not one. Okay, so if you're looking for a way to do your yarn, that's the method that I use, where you're going to have no tangles. You're going to get a nice ball of yarn that you can work with. Now, you know, like I said, I know not everybody can, because, you know, like some people are amputees. Some people have arthritis. My mom got arthritis. She couldn't sit and do this. So I know if you've got some disabilities or health conditions, you might not necessarily be able to sit like this and do your yarn. But I just want to put that out there for anybody who is able to sit this way with your legs, with, you know, with if you can sit like with your legs just cross, like cross style, you know, that's a great way to do it. But if you can't, just put them up like I have mine and hank up your yarn. All right, I just wanted to throw this out there for a fun video. So let me know, What do you do with your hanks of yarn? Is it always with a Swift? Do you just deal with the knots and the tangles? What do you do with your hanks of yarn to make them usable and minimize the knots? Okay, well, anyways, until next time, I'll see ya and happy stitching.